Hello and welcome to Module 7, Overcoming Roadblocks in Phonics Instruction. By now you've built strong routines for phonemic awareness, explicit phonics instruction, high-frequency words, connected text, and dictation. But even with excellent instruction, students will still hit roadblocks. That's not a sign of failure. It's simply part of learning to read. In this module, we're going to look closely at why students get stuck and what you can do to move them forward with confidence. As always, this module is paired with the Kickstart to Phonics Teacher's Guide. It's a free guide on my Teachers Pay Teacher store, and you can find the link in the comments below. Every teacher has had that moment where a student seems to stall. They were blending yesterday, but today they can't. They read the decodable last week, but now they freeze at the first line. Or they learned the TH on Monday and completely forgot it by Wednesday. Module 7 helps you diagnose what's really going on. Sometimes the issue is phonemic awareness. Sometimes it's blending. Sometimes it's text overwhelming. And sometimes, this is important, the student simply hasn't had enough practice to reach mastery. Our job is to identify the roadblock and respond with the right instructional move. Let's start with phonemic awareness. In my phonics guide, I say that phonemic awareness instruction should be intentionally planned and taught explicitly, using activities such as sound isolation, blending, segmenting, and manipulating phonemes. If a student cannot blend or segment orally, decoding will always feel shaky. They're trying to build a house without a foundation. So before we assume the phonics skill is the problem, we check the student's oral skills first. Here's what phonemic awareness difficulty looks like in real classrooms. A student may hear ah, p, but then says mat. Or they try to segment ship and they say s, it. Or they confuse similar sounds like f for th or eh for I. Or they rely on guessing because they cannot hold the sounds long enough to blend them. When you see these patterns, the solution isn't more phonics worksheets. It's more oral-only practice. When phonemic awareness is the roadblock, we need to step back from print and return to oral-only routines for a short while. These routines are fast, focused, and incredibly powerful because they target the exact skills students need before decoding can happen. And the good news is, I do have all of the routines available in my phonemic awareness bundle, which is linked below for easy access. Every activity I'm about to describe is included in there. Let me walk you through what each routine looks like and how you might use it. Blend and say is one of the simplest and most effective routines. You can say sounds ah, p, and the student blends them to say map. There's no print at first, no letters, no tiles. It's all listening. This is a routine perfect for students who can identify sounds but can't yet put them together. So on the left side of the screen, you see the blend and say it. The very beginning part at the top would be the only part you're showing the students. They would see the map and then they would see the green, yellow, and red. You're going to hide the letters for now. And you're going to practice saying map and you're going to practice stretching it out by putting our finger over the green, the yellow, and then the red for the beginning, middle, and end sound. So map. Say it, map. And then it's important to also bring it right back to print as soon as possible. So I give you the bottom part with the letters to practice it with letters after they practice it with the picture. The say it and segment activities in the middle and on the right work in the opposite direction. So you say the whole word, like sun, and the student breaks it apart into s, n. I also have it in 4 phoneme words when they are trying to segment with blends, because often students can get into the habit of blending with 3-letter words, and then as soon as we get to 4-letter words, it gets a little bit trickier to blend and segment those. So I have it for both. And in this activity, I have several picture cards that have 3 sounds and 4 sounds that you can switch out into the black box and practice segmenting those sounds. Another activity is called sound chains. So we've talked about word chains where we show the letters and they're writing the letters. Sound chains have nothing to do with showing the letters. We're all doing it orally. So it's another powerful tool that can help with learning different sound manipulation. So say the teacher says the word map, and the child practices saying the word map by pointing to the green, yellow, and red. With on green, on yellow, p on red. And then the teacher says, we're going to change one sound and change map to mop. And then you have little chips there of those different colors, and the student drags up which sound is different. And from going to map to mop, it would be the middle sound that is different. And in this activity, I already have a lot of sound chains. I have 2 phoneme ones, 3 phoneme ones, and 4 phoneme ones that you can practice with students. Another example is practicing with onset and rhyme. So sometimes doing 1 to 4 sounds at a time can be really difficult. So trying to do it with an onset and rhyme is just 2 parts, and that can sometimes be a little bit easier for students to start to blend just an onset and rhyme. So I have this little chart where they use the left and the right, and what the student would do is say, I give them the word cat. They're going to touch the 1 and they're going to say k, and they're going to touch the 2 and say at. And then they're going to put it together, cat. So it would look like this, k, at, cat. And this helps reduce the cognitive load, and it gives them a little bit bigger chunks to deal with, because sometimes just too many sounds at once is what's tripping them up. This is another activity called Trash to Treasure that's in my resources. This is phoneme isolation, and this is simply asking students to identify the first, middle, or last sound in a word and say whether it agrees with what our treasure is, or we should trash it because it doesn't agree with what our treasure is. So for example, if my treasure word is apple, and I'm working on beginning sounds, I would put apple in my treasure and I would give them other cards. I would give them bat. Well, does apple and bat begin with the same sound? No. So I'm going to take bat and put it in trash. What about astronaut? Yes, it does. So I'm going to put it with treasure. And you can do this with middle sounds and end sounds as well, with manipulating different types of cards. So those are just a couple different options that you can do to help with some phonemic awareness activities. The next roadblock that we often see is with blending. Blending seems to be very difficult for some students. And these students, like I showed you before, have such a hard time blending all of those same sounds together. So they just either sometimes they can't do it, or they freeze, or they say the sounds beautifully, and then when they blend them together, it just doesn't sound like the word that they are trying to blend together. So a big part of this challenge comes from the differences between continuous sounds and stop sounds. So continuous sounds are sounds we can stretch. Like in that chart on the left, I give you all the different continuous sounds in our alphabet, like s, f, ah. We can hold on to them and they can just keep stretching until we run out of breath. So these sounds are naturally easier for students to begin blending. So when we are trying to teach kids how to blend, we want to focus on those sounds first because naturally they can be stretched out and blend right into the vowel or the next letter. So we want to kind of avoid stop sounds at the beginning when we're teaching kids how to blend because they don't continue and it's hard for students to stretch those sounds out. They just kind of pop out and they just end quickly, and it's hard for them to blend it into the next sound. So one thing we can do is we can help students with blending using what's called successive blending. And this is a powerful scaffold for students. So instead of asking students to blend all three sounds together at once, we can break the process into smaller, more manageable steps. So we think about that onset and rhyme piece, how I broke it into 2 parts instead of 3 parts. This kind of works the same way, but now I'm trying to do sound by sound, but break it into more manageable steps. So we can blend 2 continuous sounds first, then we can add the final sound. So for an example here, I'm going to give you this example of mat. So here is mat. Traditionally, what I would want kids to do is we would show them the thing on the right there with all 3 letters at once, and they would go, mat. But kids who struggle with blending can't pull all of that together because of their working memory. So with successive blending, we slow it down and we scaffold it. So the first thing we do is we say the first sound and then the second sound. So we go and then we quickly go into ma, ma. What's that part say? Ma. Now it's become a chunk instead of 2 individual sounds. And we model this for students a lot at the very beginning. And then we add the final sound. Ma, ma, mat, mat. And then it becomes mat a lot more easily for students. And this can often be frustrating a little bit with students at the beginning because it's still hard, but it takes a lot of practice with students. So I do have successive blending activities. So here on the left, I do have successive blending slides that are for various parts of my beginning of my scope and sequence, like short vowels and digraphs and blends to help them get started. But it's also important to note that successive blending is not something that you need to use forever. It's a temporary scaffold. So it's a bridge for students who need the extra support. So you might use this during whole group when you're noticing lots of students are struggling with blending. You might slow it down and do successive blending with them. Or you might do it in small group based on just a small percentage of kids that you're noticing are struggling with it. Or it might be part of your warm-up. In some of my early decodable books, especially my letter book ones, I have a lot of successive blending at the very beginning of them. Or you might even practice this during dictation when segmenting is hard too. You can go to successive blending to help them. This might also be a great time when you're introducing a new phonics pattern to go back to this, because I notice a lot of times students will be able to do CVC words well. They'll get really good at blending CVC words. And then as soon as you add an initial blend in there, they start to have trouble again. So you might have to go back to successive blending once you get to some blends or final blends. So again, it's only needed for a short period of time. You should only be doing it for a week or 2 before they're ready to begin doing that without the successive blending. So another scaffold is for decoding. So when you get to that connect to text part of my phonics lesson plan, a decodable text can be very overwhelming for students, especially when students are still working on building their confidence. So a full page of text can be very overwhelming, and it's something you want to build up to, and you want kids to see, we're going to be able to read this soon one day, but let's work a little bit backwards to get to this point. So Instead of pushing them right to the decodable when they're not ready, let's scaffold their experience. So before reading, we always set students up for success. We preview the phonics skill, we practice it, we pre-teach any vocabulary we need to do during reading. We set a purpose for our reading. We find all of the phonics features when we're reading. This helps reduce anxiety and gives students a clear entry point into the text. And then during reading, we're staying close to the students. We're using echo reading or choral reading, or we're modeling fluency. And maybe we're tapping or blending unfamiliar words together. And we prompt students really gently. We say, try that again, or that sound doesn't make that letter, or what sound makes that letter? And we celebrate decoding wins. When kids do a really good job and they're trying something that they haven't done before and they're showing success, we give them praise for that. So this helps keep students engaged and supportive and not feeling overwhelmed. And then after we're done reading, we reinforce what we've just taught. We maybe go through the text and look for the targeted pattern words. We reread that text again for fluency. We ask comprehension questions about the text. All of this helps students connect the phonics skill to meaning, which is the whole point of reading. So now what I want to do is look at a few of the things. If you remember from my phonics lesson plan, there were several different boxes that were included in the connect to text, and the decodable passage was the last one. So I want to work backwards and show you the different things I have available to work up towards a decodable text. So the easiest, I would say, lack of a better term, resource that I have are word cards. So this is where students could practice the skill they're just learning in isolation, one word card at a time. This is the least overwhelming a lot of times for students because they're just having to focus on one word at a time, especially when the skill is so brand new to them. The next one would be fluency grids. So these I use a lot during cumulative review as well, but you can pull them into connected to text. And these are just, each grid is focused on a phonics feature, and it has various words of that phonics feature. And you could say, I want you to read the first line. I want you to read the first 2 lines. You can choose how much they want to read. Sometimes I even make it a game and they can skip around and put a little chip or a token on all the words they read correctly. Another option is the phonics fluency sheets. And what I like about these is it starts to get them into phrases and sentences a little bit. So they start with single words or words in isolation at the top, and then they get into more words, and then they get into phrases, and then they get into sentences. So they're starting to build that sentence level fluency as well. And then blending lines is another option where they start with words in that certain phonics feature, and then another row of those words, and then I have a row of maybe those phonics features with maybe some inflected endings like S or ing or ed if we've already learned that, and then it goes into a sentence. So again, it's building up towards that sentence level reading and getting our way closer to full passage reading. And then I have the Let's Read decoding sheets, which are also words just in isolation. But what I like about these is that it gives you a little bit of review from previous skills, plus the current skill, plus more complex words with the phonics skill. And then the Let's Scoop resource I have is all at the sentence level. And then in this one, I have it phrased with little lines underneath, so the students learn to phrase sentences properly. And this is really good to help with fluency when you're trying to work on that expression piece. And then I have decodable sentences, where it's about 5 lines of just decodable sentences. And this is getting closer to this passage level. They're not sentences that really relate to each other, so it doesn't really make a story, but they are all practicing the phonics skill that you're learning. I am starting to create some other more engaging things to kind of get closer to the passage. So I'm doing a reader's theater where you can incorporate multiple readers at a time. And then I'm also making comics as well, which are a big hit with kids because they like the graphic novels lately. So that all works its way up to a decodable. So on this slide, kind of gives you an example of how if I teach a phonics skill for a week, how I can work my way up to a decodable passage. So say I'm just introducing the SH sound this week. And Monday, I'm going to do my lesson with SH. And then when I get to connected text, I'm just going to do word cards with the students. Tuesday, I'm going to continue my SH work. And now we're going to do the let's read or fluency grids. And then Wednesday, we're going to keep working on SH, but I'm going to get to the blending lines. And then Thursday, I'm going to continue SH, but now we're going to do let's scoop or decodable sentences. And then Friday, we're going to get all the way to that decodable passage, which is a short story that is going to contain a lot of SH words in it, but also has lots of meaning in it, and that they can grab meaning from the story. And then all of those resources, of course, can be reinforced during small group time with those students, and I can also send all of them home for at-home practice. So again, you don't have to do every type of what I have in connected to text portion. If I feel like students don't even need the word cards and maybe Monday I want to start with blending lines, I could do that as well. Or the goal is where are you need to think about where your students are, what they can handle at that time, how new is that skill, how overwhelmed will they be with that new skill, what am I going to do to scaffold to get them to be able to read the decodable eventually. And when they do get to the decodable, a decodable still, even with all of that practice, can still be very overwhelming because it's a lot of words on a page. So I have a routine called transfer to text that I use with a lot of students. So basically there's 4 steps with this. So you have your decodable. The surfer is one of my decodables for our controlled vowels in my resources. And the first thing we do when the students get the decodable is I guide students to highlight the target pattern words. So they just go through, I give them 1 minute and a highlighter. They go through and they highlight all of those are controlled words. And then what we do is we have the students only read those highlighted words. So they're just going to the highlighted words and reading each one. We're not reading the whole passage yet. And then what we do is that then we go back and we choral read now, maybe the first paragraph or the first couple of lines of the passage. And if I feel like they're ready, then maybe I will have them do it with a buddy or independently read. Again, I'm following the students. Do we need to chorally read the whole thing? Maybe we do. So we're just following what their needs are. So now let's talk about the last roadblock I want to talk about in this module, and it often gets overlooked. It's called mastery difficulty. So sometimes the student isn't confused. They're not missing they're not missing the skill. They simply just haven't had enough practice with the skill. So in module 1, we talked about how many exposures it takes for a skill to become automatic. And I talked about Wiley Blevin's research on it's not one or done. It takes 4 to 6 weeks to really, with cumulative review, to get a lot of this mastered. And some students, it takes much longer. Some students get a lot quicker or more quickly. So some students need far more repetitions than others, and that's totally okay. Mastery takes time and it takes consistency. So here's how you know the issue is mastery and not misunderstanding. So a student can decode TH words on Monday, but they forget them by Wednesday. They can write the pattern during dictation, but not during writing. They can read the pattern in isolation, but not in connected text. They need frequent reminders. What sound does TH make again? This tells us the student understands the skill. They have some sort of knowledge of the skill. They just need more reps. Think of working out. Need more reps to get stronger. When mastery is the roadblock, the solution is simple: more practice, more exposure, maybe more explicit teaching. This is when we build in extra blending lines, more tap and map it and write it reps, more word cards, more fluency grids, more decoding sentences, more guided rereads. Mastery grows through fluency, not speed. Frequency, not speed. We don't rush, we don't repeat. So one of the biggest barriers to mastery is inconsistency. So if a student works with multiple adults, like a classroom teacher, an interventionist, a special educator, a para, or even an adult and each of the adults is teaching a different skill. So we're talking about tier 1 instruction versus tier 2 and 3 instruction. If all of those adults are teaching different skills and teaching those different skills in different ways, or even if they're teaching the same skill but teaching it in different ways and using different routines and different like mnemonics and things like that, the child becomes confused. To support mastery, all the adults must be aligned. That's our job as teachers. We have to talk and we have to be aligned. Everyone should be reinforcing the same phonics skill, using the same routines, and speaking the same instructional language. So when everyone is rowing in the same direction, students master skills faster and with far less confusion and frustration. So Module 7 gives you the tools to respond to when students get stuck, whether the issue is phonemic awareness, blending, connected text, or simply not enough practice. When we diagnose the right roadblock, we choose the right response. And when we choose the right response, students move forward. So in our final module, Module 8, we'll look at how to build independent practice routines that reinforce phonics skills throughout the day, help students maintain the progress they've made, and how to progress monitor so you always know whether students are moving forward, holding steady, or need additional support.